Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. I just wanted to remind everyone out there that we have 3 days left, today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. 3 days left to design posters for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. This is an example of an entry from Jason Spriggs. If you are interested, you still can submit poster designs. They have to be 26 by 40. They have to be able to be printed in very high resolution. So go do your thing and send them to us at theburnettwork.net. There's a special tab at the top of the website, in the top right-hand corner, where you can send your design.
You've borne witness to a secret exchange. Now get ready for an unboxing of unseen magnitude. Join Patrick Keller, Peter Bastian, and featuring Mia Keller in The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises. This weekend is a world premiere on the Burnettwork.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media. And as I was called today, John Campy has said I was your galactic hot pocket. I don't even know what that means, but apparently there's another name that's been hung on me. So, Robert Meyer Burnett here with Robservations, episode number 523. Rob casting at you from the Robservatory. It's an exciting week, ladies and gentlemen. We have our gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify them, from across these great 28 known galaxies. The film festival, the Intergalactic Film Festival, the first annual, which we decided to call it instead of inaugural, the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival opens for business on Thursday. All the rules and entry forms will be on our website. And there you go. There you go. So that's exciting. And then the poster competition does end. Jeff Yerke sent in another poster. I just got this. This is very cool. Look at this. You can't really see, but the spiral galaxy, or I guess that's the event horizon being sucked into a black hole, or, the Andromeda Galaxy, is all different movie quotes. This is really actually a very cool design. I like this, and if you read all those quotes, if you see it big, you'll recognize them all. So the film festival poster competition ends on Wednesday, and we're going to put all those up, and I'm going to leave them up until October 5th. So we'll have 5 days for everybody to vote and look at the posters. And again, we'll have those all up on the website. So that's going to be very cool. It's exciting. We're going to be announcing awards and all kinds of things, and it's shaping up. I mean, I keep getting more and more really interesting emails from people and communications. People are excited about it. People are fired up. I don't know how many people are actually going to get movies done, but we shall see. I have faith in all of you imagination connoisseurs. It's going to be fun. We're going to change. I keep changing things around in terms of how we're going to do it. And I think how it's going to happen is on Christmas Day, I'm going to have a pre-recorded show. And unless your movie is just god-awful, I think every submission that we get, because I don't know how many there are going to be, I think we'll play every submission that we get. Assuming that it's family-friendly or whatever. So on Christmas Day, I'll pre-record a show where I introduce each film, tell the names of the filmmakers, and I'll have a program, and I'll just play that, and I'll probably play it a couple of times all the way through on Christmas Day. We were going to have our award show on Christmas, the next day, on Boxing Day, but I think we need more time, because what we're going to do is all of the films are going to be played. And then the semi-finalists are going to go up on YouTube. separately. And what's going to happen with the semifinalists is you're all going to be voting for them, and the movie that gets the most likes will win, of course, the Sally Field Lifetime Appreciation Award, because the one that gets the most likes, obviously, you like that film. You really like that film. Of course, you know, everybody's friends and family are going to click on see who gets the most likes up until whatever time. But you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody what that time's going to be, so you can't just sit there and click and click and click, because whatever time I tell you it's going to really end, it's not going to end then. So we'll see, because I don't want, you know, to try and combat people just sitting there and clicking, or whatever, or getting their friends to do it. But either way, it's still in flux. So it looks like it's going to be Christmas Day. All the films will be played on the festival. Then on probably New Year's Eve day, we're going to do a live show and give out the awards. And between them, you'll be able to vote on the semifinalists. So that's how it's going to work, at least as of today. It's a very iterative process, kind of like filmmaking. And since we're kicking off the week, I figured I'd give you a little bit of insight. So one of my goals in the next couple of years is to direct another feature film. And I have the script that I've been working on. But nowadays, having a script, even having made a movie, even though I haven't made a movie in a long time, I've got a film I produced coming out. Obviously, I have a Netflix show that I've worked on coming out. So I have a lot of things. Hey, I even associate produced John Campia's movie he made, his documentary. So I've got a lot of stuff going on. And now is the time. Now I'm ready. I've got my script. I've got my material. But in order to get the material taken seriously, you know, all directors, you have to make lookbooks and explain. Everybody's making some iteration of something that they can show to executives, studio executives, to management companies, agencies, whatever. What I am doing is I am making what's called a story reel, which is what they used to do in animation, where you take storyboards, but you cut them together. And you cut them all together into a story reel. So my story reel will actually be mixed in 5.1 stereo. There will be actors performing the script. And right now I'm having the first 30 minutes of the script storyboarded. So every shot that I would do is going to be storyboarded, and you'll be able to watch it. So the storyboards, some of the storyboards will have animation on them. There'll be lighting effects, all kinds of things. So you'll have the script. So whoever I'm pitching this to will have the script in hand, but they can also watch this story reel, which is how I would direct the feature film. So you'll literally be able to watch this story reel shot by shot, but it'll be cut together as much as I can make it like a movie, even though it's still frames. I just don't have the technology to make animatics for every shot. I mean, it would take forever. So maybe I'll throw in some animatics, but mostly it's a story reel. And I'm working now with an artist to create the boards, and I'm getting really excited about it. The first two scenes of the movie are being worked on now. I expect to have the entire story reel done by December. By the time, you know, to maybe show some of it for New Year's Eve. I don't know. But I figured I'd share with you right now, because people are always interested in the filmmaking process. So first of all, I should say that everybody does something different now. If you're trying to mount a film or get it made, everybody's doing things differently. I've seen a lot of things. There's things called lookbooks, where a director will literally make a book. And what you do is you take photographs or images from either other movies or maybe artwork that you like, and you put it in sort of a book form that you can take into a pitch with you. So somebody, an executive, or if you're meeting with a group of people, they all have the book in front of them. They can open it up, and it creates a mood or the look. That's why it's called a lookbook of what it is you want to do, what it is you hope to convey. And I think that those are great. Some people make what are called in advertising circles. When I worked in advertising, I was an editor, and when I was a producer. I was a producer, editor, predator. So I produced and edited. Sometimes I voiced, as anyone who's seen the XFL cheerleader commercials can attest to. I voiced commercials. So what you would do is you would make for commercials a lot of the time. When I was pitching an idea, I did this for when Connie Chung and Dan Rather broke up. I was working on the CBS Evening News campaign in the mid 90s. So what I would do is I would have to create what were called rip-o-matics, where a rip-o-matic was you rip off, we had like hundreds of tapes of various people's commercial directors' reels. You know, like we had Michael Bay's reel or David Fincher's commercial or music video reel. And what you'd do is you'd steal the shots that you needed, you'd cut them all together, and you'd make what looked like a commercial. It was just everybody else's shots. And you'd reassemble it in whatever way. Like, I'll give you an example. I was given an ad line, which was, "Have you seen your country today?" CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. But they didn't have a concept for that. They just had the name, "Have you seen your country today?" And I was new at this company. It was an advertising agency called Jacobs and Gerber. And they just said, "Try it. You know, go ahead, kid. You know, do what you do." So I came up with this concept where it was Americana. And I just showed all kinds of things to Americana. And I actually used a piece of Mike Oldfield's music from the Killing Fields, the movie, the Roland Joffe movie, The Killing Fields. And it was kind of very sweeping but again, you're taking images from the greatest commercials, you know, and so they spend all the money. They look incredible. And so my rip-o-matic for that was very impressive, and the company bought off on that. They're like, "Okay, you now go make that commercial." So what was interesting about that, then I had to go then get stock footage. So for those of you who might not know what stock footage is sort of, there are companies, whether it's Shutterstock or whether it's Getty Images or something, where you can actually go and buy footage. Like, people will go shoot footage, or they've bought stock footage from other places. So if you need like an establishing shot of the Brooklyn Bridge, you can go, there's a library of many different kinds of shots of the Brooklyn Bridge, different times of day, and then you go and you can buy or license that footage to use. So in my particular "Have you seen your country today" spot, I had to take the greatest commercial directors and film directors in the world, their reels that had the best shots on them, and then I had to go find the equivalent shots in stock footage. Which, you know, as you can imagine, it's once you've sold somebody on a concept, they expect to see that exact same thing. It was kind of like that, but it aired. They liked it, and they had me come back, and I created for summer, spring, and winter and fall, I created different campaigns based around the "Have you seen your country today" concept, and it was a lot of fun. And I actually taught myself how to use the Avid. This was, again, back in the mid 90s. I'd never used nonlinear editorial software before until I used it then, and I used that, and I taught myself how to do graphics, and it was a lot of fun. And I was getting paid to do it. So, and they had just got a very expensive Avid, and back then Avids were really expensive because they had proprietary software. But anyway, so everybody, you know, when you do lookbooks or people do rip-o-matics where they take footage and images of other movies and cut it all together as a proposal. And I've done that for a long time as well. And everybody sort of does things differently. It depends how you're gonna do it. Well, if you have the Hills Run Red Blu-ray, I know you're tired of hearing me talk about it, but one of the things that sold the Hills Run Red to Warner Brothers was we had shot a teaser trailer that sort of conveyed the tone of the movie. We did a one-day shoot, and we actually went out and shot a 2-minute trailer, so you could get a feel of what Dave Parker wanted to do as the director of the project. And it started out as a story reel. So it started out as a story reel, the same thing. He had storyboards drawn and cut them all together, and you put moves on them and animation on them. And that story reel, or animatic, I mean, animatics really have moving footage, you know, you previs, stuff like that. But a story reel, animatic, you can call it the same thing, I guess. I just call it a story reel because I worked on a lot of Disney animated DVDs, and that's what they called it when we were doing that. And Pixar, before Pixar would start animating, they would have story reels, and you can see if jokes work, you can see if the scenes work, especially when you have actors. I mean, right now, my story reel is just me doing all the parts, but eventually I'm going to get actors or friends of mine to come in to do the different parts, so the voices are different, and then mix it with music, previously existing music, and you use it as a sales tool. And it shows people, it shows them if they're iffy on you as a director. I think this story reel will show, like, okay, here's the first 25 minutes of movie. Don't you want to see the rest? And you're trying to make it compelling. So I figured I would show you guys. I'm so happy with the storyboard artist, what they look like. Now, I'm not going to tell you who these people are, anything about the plot, but so you know. So this is one of our characters backstage at an event, but this is one of the story reels. So this is kind of what's really interesting now because of the kind of technology you have. So this is a drawing, but it's also been colored and there's various effects used on it. And here's another shot from my story reel. And I figured you guys would get so imagine this. It'll be in the proper aspect ratio of 2:3:9 to 1. So I'll take out the borders and blow it up a little bit. But you can add for lighting effects and doing things however you want to do them, you can. So what you'll do is you'll be able to sit down and watch the story reel. I would imagine that ultimately it'll have the same number of shots as you would see in a film. What you want to try and do is get those. So every shot that I would do as a director would be represented by this story reel. So you could sit down and be like, these are all of my shots. So when I direct the movie, it's going to look like this. That's kind of what you're trying to convey to your whoever, if I had a meeting at Netflix or a studio or Apple TV or whatever, they would be able to sit down and see this and really get a sense of the film. And you get to hear, by doing a story reel or even an animatic, you get to hear what it would sound like. You get to feel the story. And it also helps me, to be honest. So the way I work is I do sort of a rip-o-matic story reel where I go through and I grab still frames of shots that I want, and then I use my editorial background and I edit the still frames the same way that I would edit live action footage. So I treat it, even though it's just a still, I treat it as if it's live action. Sometimes I'll put camera moves on the still or something, but when you sit down, you get the idea that the film is how it would work. So I'll do the animatic stuff, like the opening scene in the movie is 3 minutes long. So in that, there's probably, 50 shots. So, and what I do is I get the shots, but then the artist that I'm working with can either draw over those shots and make them his own. Like, for instance, this particular shot I needed a shot, a character's backstage, and standing alone, and I needed this, but the shot I couldn't find this exact shot, so I found something similar, and then the artist comes in and does it the way I want it. Like I explained to him in text, I'm like, well, this is what I'm trying to convey. I want this look and this feel, but can you make it one figure here and whatever. But the artist, it's really cool. I love what he did. There's, if you can see in the bottom left corner, some of the equipment cases, he put Ludovico on it, which I think that's my production company, which I think is great. But so you'll be able to sit down and watch 25 minutes of this as if it's a movie. And I'm hoping that not only sells the story and sells the screenplay, but it also sells me as a director, because you're seeing, literally with this story reel, you're seeing everything that I would do, because as a director, I'm giving you how it was going to look and also how it's going to feel, but I'm also cutting it together. So it'll be like watching, a movie, at least I hope. So I have not done this. I've not been so fired up I've actually never tried to get a feature directing job. And interestingly enough, there are also 2 other projects that one of them I'm doing notes on the screenplay for, and I was approached to do another. So it's very interesting. There's a maybe I'll do 3 movies. You never know, because this project is very ambitious and it's expensive, but the other projects that I'm involved with cost much less money. And it's very interesting. Basically, Goethe, Dieter Bastian would have to help me out on this. There's a philosopher named Goethe, and there's a concept that he talks about. Basically, when you commit to something, when you actually commit to a course of action, and you set out onto that course of action, or set out on the path of that course of action, that the rest of the universe will come to your aid. That when you start the gears moving, you might be here and then the gears lock and all the other gears that are connected. And I've found that to be true in life, actually. When you start doing something, that things, the tumblers of the universe start to click into place to help you out. And there's been some over the last few weeks, even 3 or 4 weeks, that has definitely come to pass, and it's very interesting. Like, I'm not ready to talk about this project or show anybody this story reel for months yet, because I'm going to do all the work. And look, here's something I've learned in Hollywood that I think you can take anywhere. You only get one time to show something to somebody, just once. Yeah, you can always go back to them and show it to them again, but really, you have one time. You only have one time to make a first impression. And I think it's really important that you always lead with your best foot. And a lot of the time when you're involved in a film project, I mean, I'll show you these. I showed you these 2 images to sort of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. But like, I'm not going to show the reel. I'm not going to show my finished reel right now. But or even when it's done in months from now. Hopefully, I'm planning to get it done by the end of the year. The first 25 minutes by the end of the year. But both I have to do the pre-mix or the pre-animatic or the pre-story reel, and then give it to my artist. And doing the pre-story reel is it's a long process. It's tough because I have to sit there and when I'm dreaming up a shot, I'm looking for a specific image that's vaguely familiar or vaguely looks like what I want. That's not necessarily always the easiest thing to do. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting and give you a little insight into where I'm coming from. Now, I have received over the last 2 days a tsunami, a deluge of letters. So I figured rather than look for a topic, I'm just going to jump into this incredible. I'm just going to start. I mean, I swear to God, there's maybe 30 letters here. I'm just going to start and see where we go. And I'll jump in and out of your comments, the live comments. So if you want to ask a question, leave a super chat or tip, you can do that. I'll go back and forth. I won't talk for like an hour, and I'll keep watching. The first letter comes from Colin. Colin says, "Hey Rob, since you are a big film director, please don't say you aren't. You directed William Shatner." Well, I directed William Shatner. The movie came out 21 years ago, but I appreciate it. "I'm curious about what you think of the backlash that seems to be growing towards the tyrant director. Whether it's the ridiculous article about Kubrick that included his harsh treatment of actors, the Ray Fisher, Joss Whedon headlines. Hell, I even read an article taking Christopher Nolan to task for supposedly not allowing chairs on set. Look at how Friedkin got performances during The Exorcist, or Peckinpah pulling a gun during a meeting. I think these men's and many others' demanding natures help result in great work. I hate to break it to clickbait writers, but try working for a chef if you can't deal with being yelled at and insulted. Go work construction and see how quickly somebody will tell you to hurry up and do your effing job. Deal with the public, answer to a boss when you're in charge of an expensive project. Your sensitivities will not be a high priority, and you will be threatened with losing your job and career if you aren't meeting standards. I know there are people who will take it too far, but this cotton candy forest of rivers and milk chocolate ideas that some have about a workplace should be is laughably unrealistic to me, and I find it curious that it's being applied to Hollywood of all places, a land of creative endeavors and people who are overseeing projects that cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. I will bet that the set of The Exorcist, The Shining, Justice League, or any Peckinpah film was a chill dream compared to serving in a fine dining restaurant on a busy night or working construction, and I've done both. I've been yelled at, cursed, had things thrown at me, gotten into a fist fight on the job building a golf course, and saw 2 fights in kitchens at a bistro I worked at. It wasn't every day, but it wasn't something totally shocking either. I'm dying to know what you think of the criticism of demanding directors like Kubrick, Cameron, and Friedkin, and if you were one yourself as well, as if you find the overly idealistic narrative that's being pushed about film sets to be at all realistic or workable. Thank you for your time, as always. Well, first of all, I guess that's a 2-part question. The thing about Stanley Kubrick is he worked with very small crews, and his movies didn't cost that much money. Well, some cost more than others. Things like Spartacus, which is something he was brought into, cost a lot. 2001 obviously cost a lot, but when he made Eyes Wide Shut, he could shoot that movie for a year, but he had such a small crew and not that many actors that it wasn't costing a lot of money. Now, the thing about Stanley Kubrick that people don't understand, and one of the reasons why I love him so much, is because I always talk about on the show about authorship. When, Kubrick came out of, when he was still in high school, he won an award and became a photographer for Look magazine. And he took a picture when FDR died, and how like it was a picture of a news vendor kind of looking depressed with the headline next to him. And he received great acclaim for that. And then Kubrick went on to become an incredible documentary photographer, really catching the feel of events, whether it was a jazz show or whether it was a fight, or whether it was just the streets of New York. So Kubrick knew how to run a camera. He knew how to write. He knew how to direct. He knew exactly what he wanted. So the thing about Kubrick is that he had such a vision to get out, and he had to work with people. When you're making a movie, you have to work with other people. It's a collective, collaborative process. So, and you're trying to extract. If you're a strong-headed director and you really know what you want, Kubrick, by the way, was very collaborative. The reason why he shot so much and would do so many takes a lot of the time is he was trying to figure out what it was he wanted, and was trying to discover something on the road to getting what he needed. And that was all part of his process. And the reason he was the way he was he wanted perfection. And because at the end of the day, it was his movie, and he was responsible for all of it, and he wasn't going to compromise. Now, I think there's a way of doing that. David Fincher, of course, is very famous for doing lots of takes as well. And David Fincher, like Kubrick, it's a combination of acting and precise camera work. And the thing is, what people don't understand, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars now. Now, I think, so do I think people should be abused on film sets? Absolutely not. But when you have directors like James Cameron who can do everyone's job, and he knows he can, and he has to deal with the way the mechanism works, when really he could just probably be on his own, and if he didn't need actors or anything, he could probably make these films by himself, but he can't. You have to work with other people. So I think if you're working with a director who's demanding, you go with it. You already know they're demanding, but there's a difference between being demanding and being abusive. I don't believe that anybody on a film set needs to be abused. And I think the way you can avoid and alleviate these problems is the more planning that you've done as a director, and your department heads are all inside your head, and the more that people know what is expected of them, I think the better and the smoother film sets will run. Now, that doesn't mean that if an actor isn't giving you what you want, that you don't get frustrated and people don't yell. It's a very creatively... film sets can be volatile creatively. They shouldn't be. I don't believe that film sets, as a producer and as somebody who's been on both sides, but as a producer on a set, I don't think having a film set where everybody is on their tippy toes, walking lightly around the director, I don't think that's conducive. I don't think that's a conducive work environment. What you want to do as a director is to lead by example. And that is knowing exactly what you want, knowing how to talk to your department heads, utilizing the thing that people don't understand about movies is that everybody on a set they're all there to do their best work, and they want that collaboration with the director. The department heads want nothing more than to give the director what he or she wants and needs. And so the more you as a director can communicate exactly what you want, the better off film sets are. I thrive in that environment. I think my style, if you ask me personally what my style is unbridled enthusiasm and energy. I just get excited about everything that people are doing. I mean, every time somebody brings me something new, I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Not that I'm not going to have ideas, but just that I love seeing other people's work. Like the artist that I'm working with now on the story reel has taken everything that I've given him and plussed it, made it much, much better. And that's what you're hoping for. And I think the only way to do that is to, like a guy like Kubrick you're working for him, and that's about it. The buck stops with him. But nowadays on studio projects, there's a lot more interference. There's a lot more money at stake. So you're not going to have a guy working on a movie like Stanley Kubrick who's going to be working on a $200 million movie. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't think that would really be conducive for somebody like Stanley Kubrick to do that. And the way he worked very light with a small number of people. So he was able to get away with it. And you knew that it was him. But look, when you've got 250 people on set every day and you've got the studio breathing down your neck, you want to make sure that you're easy to work with and that you know what you're doing. You got to make your days. So I don't think the days of being larger than life directors who might go off. I mean, James Cameron is a very difficult taskmaster, again, because he knows he requires excellence, and he's working at the highest level in Hollywood. He doesn't go and make $4 million. I mean, not since Terminator 1 did he make a $4.5 million movie. I mean, he's putting it all out there, and he expects you to rise to the occasion. And, I just don't believe in being abusive. I prefer, if you've ever seen behind-the-scenes footage of Quentin Tarantino directing, and why are we doing this? Because we love making movies. I don't know if he's a difficult taskmaster. I know he shoots a lot and he gets what he wants, but I prefer his approach where, you keep the set fun and lively, and you want to foster an environment where people are doing their best work because they feel their best work is recognized. And as a director, it's your job to keep your troops, it's your army. And as a director, you need to make sure that you're engaged with all of your departments, because if you're not, trust me on this. Every department on a film set, if you're a director that's engaged and shows interest and you have a decisive nature, that's the best thing. And that's what your crew wants from you. They'll give you 120% if they feel that you're engaged and you're open to what they're giving you, and that you're excited about it, and you have that dialogue. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than to work with a bunch of creative people in different disciplines, and you as the director are at the center of it all, filtering everything. But what you want is you want to get everybody on that set to give you their best work. So I don't necessarily believe in treating people badly, or there's no reason. You can be difficult, but you can also be difficult in a constructive way, if that makes any sense. But that was a good letter. Thanks for that. Thanks for that letter. Enterprise HNCC 1701, our friend, writes in and says, "Man of morality, greetings. First, have you checked out the game Star Trek Generations? I have not. I'm so busy. You had time to check out a JJ verse novel. I did. I haven't checked out the game Generations. Because, when I go to bed, I read. So now this letter has been a long time coming. It is a moral quandary in Star Trek fashion. But first, for this question to have any meaning at all, given that you are a hardcore Star Trek fan, would you happen to know where Star Trek gets aired? That is to say, which regions in the world which can access new and or old Star Trek episodes through legal means? Well, I would imagine many different places that have streaming services, because Star Trek seems to be on all of them. I ask this because the simple inclusion of a lesbian couple in the background of Toy Story 4 got it banned from several countries in the Middle East. If Discovery, which features a gay couple, can be viewed there, then you may end the letter here. I am not sure. That's a very good question. So the moral question is this: is it better to include diversity which is not accepted in parts of the world and will get censored anyway, like the lesbian kiss in Rise of Skywalker, or use metaphors to bypass existing prejudices and censorship in order to get people to think about these matters? That's interesting. In a documentary which I saw on television regarding the Jewish director who made a film on the Holocaust, Death Mills, there was the notion that he hated the directness of later eras. He thought that the lack of censors made it so that it required no intelligence to bring points across anymore. As you might know, before Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry did social commentary on a series known as Lieutenant. It was a cop show. It was fairly tepid and may even be seen as insulting in today's political climate, but it must be noted that it drew the ire of the Pentagon, and the episode got censored. For a market which is tolerant of such things, I'd say that is fine. There are plenty of shows aimed at American audiences which feature homosexual characters, and from what I understand, most young Republicans are accepting of gay people. But once the majority of people are tolerant, is it just preaching to the choir or virtue signaling when there are others who could be reached instead? I don't know. Star Trek always felt more like it was laying the groundwork for others to eventually build upon. Enterprise H, NCC 1701. Well, first, there's a number of things in there. Look, entertainment is a business. If you're making television and you're making movies, you want to sell them to the most amount of people possible and to get a return on your investment. It's one of the greatest businesses of all, but as a business, it can be really shitty sometimes. So if you're including objectionable material, and there's all over the world, there's places that have different standards and things that they allow or don't allow, and that can be problematic. But I think, yeah, if you want to release, again, that's a good question. Are you going to edit Star Trek Discovery episodes to have Stamets and Colbert? Can you do that without, I don't know, offending people? I find, look, we're evolving. But in terms of things like LGBTQ people, trans people, however you want to put it, they exist. I mean, the funny thing about the world is that it's not like these things are new. There have been LGBTQ and trans people on the planet since the dawn of time. It's not been something that is new. And oppressive regimes or people that for whatever reason believe those things are a sin or whatever, I mean, we still have to deal with those, what I would call archaic notions, even though these people have been around forever. They're as much a part of humanity as anybody else, and but the question that you're asking is, I think I find most things on modern Star Trek is pandering, and it is virtue signaling. It's done in such a ham-fisted, heavy-handed way, and it's not good science fiction. I would much rather see, okay, now that we're accepting now in the 20th century of, for instance, of a gay couple, why would you even in the 23rd century or 24th century, 23rd century in Discovery's case, when you're portraying it, why is the portrayal of a gay couple the way it would be in the early part of the 21st century? Why? It seems so, like, I think by then nobody would care. And that's my problem. It's like, here we've got the scene with the gay couple. I don't feel like it's naturalistic at all. When Star Trek first aired in 1966, the camera never stopped to linger on Uhura and say, look at now, we've got a black woman, part of the command structure of the bridge. It was just there. And it was that kind of representation that's much better, as it being matter of fact, as it being everyday and ordinary. Like, there's the great episode where Abraham Lincoln meets Uhura on the bridge and calls her a charming negress. And you go, oops, and then he realizes what he said. And Uhura says, Nichelle Nichols says, it's okay. I mean, in the 23rd century, in our time, we've learned not to fear words. And what I think is so great about that scene is even Abraham Lincoln knows after he said those words that he's messed up. And I think that, when you get to the future, I think the best way to show representation is to just show it. You don't call attention to it, because when you call attention to it, it's pandering. It's not good. But as far as what other people expect around the world, we do have to tailor our entertainment because unfortunately not everybody is as forward thinking as we are, and we're not necessarily as forward thinking as people in other countries. Certainly not. But yeah, I mean, I just think, it comes down to, are you a good writer? Do you know how to tell a story correctly? I mean, why do you feel the need to include these certain things in shows? And how are you going to do it the best way you can? Victor Rosario from Maine is here. Dear Rob, love and hate for a galaxy far, far away. In my previous letter, I talked about the life-changing influence that Star Wars had on me when I was 15. Despite the devotion I will always feel for that film, my relationship with the franchise has soured over the years. Since 1980, only the magnificent Rogue One and the very decent Solo have not been a source of frustration and sometimes roll-your-eyes embarrassment. Misa, Jar Jar Binks, anyone? Months ago, I was watching the John Campea show while you guys were ranking all the films of the franchise. What is now titled A New Hope was not just groundbreaking, it was a Best Picture nominee. Nonetheless, you and I agree that the sequel is the superior film. The Empire Strikes Back raised the bar to a still unmatched level, even though plot-wise it's more of a personal story than the original. No exploding planets here, only exploding expectations. Every minute of Lucas and Kirshner's masterpiece seemed planned and designed. Campea, on the other hand, picked Return of the Jedi as his favorite. I like John. We even orbit in the same ringed planet, but I know he parks his shuttlecraft elsewhere. My guess is that for him, nostalgia is the deciding factor. But that movie, directed by Richard Marquand, was my first major theatrical letdown. Mine, too. Empire was not as kid-friendly as Star Wars. It made less money, too, so I guess they decided to switch gears and dial down the doom and gloom. The problem is that Jedi is so jolly that it seemed to be only about selling toys instead of closing the trilogy in dramatic fashion. There were stretches between the action scenes that felt pointless and lackadaisical, as if they were killing screen time. I completely agree. The beautiful cinematography, shot composition, and lighting was also lost. Take the Sarlacc pit scene. It looks cheap and uninspired. It does. It looks like a TV movie. Jabba the Hutt may have looked like a bloated H.R. Pufnstuf in dire need of AA and drug rehab, but at least he was fun. I would have preferred a longer stay on Tatooine to give room for him and Boba Fett to dance their bad boy Boogaloo, instead of rushing to a planet of allegedly man-eating teddy bears. George Lucas discarded the planet of Wookiees for that. Only Ian McDiarmid's performance as the Emperor in the final 15 minutes of footage saved the film. The rest is, well, garbage. When I came out of the theater, I was livid, even felt betrayed. Empire had made a promise of upcoming greatness that Jedi did not even try and keep. Boba Fett was one of the coolest looking villains ever, but all he contributed to the movie was to the Sarlacc's diet. He had little to do and nothing to say. We could have used a scene like this. Boba Fett stands amidst a maelstrom of partying creatures. A drunken octopod bumps into him. Boba turns his head menacingly, his hand on his blaster. The creature's face bleaches out, his tentacles droop in hurried apology. A disdainful Boba marches away toward the carbon-frozen Han Solo. Boba Fett, I didn't know you had any friends besides the Wookiee. Did you know that the prize on Skywalker's head is 30 times larger than yours? I could retire with that. Vader and the Empire want him alive. I can't imagine why alive. How inconvenient, now that he is coming our way. The face of Han Solo is still frozen in agonized expression. Boba Fett, how could a local farm boy destroy that Imperial planet blaster? Unbelievable. But then no one would believe in the Death Star if Alderaan were still around. No wonder your friend found religion. Boba studies the vital signs electronic panel on the side of the carbonite slab. It glows electric green. A smiling Jabba the Hutt notices. The smile fades. Boba Fett, not that I care, but I wonder how long you can stay in hibernation without becoming spoiled meat. Fett feels the weight of Jabba's glare. He steps back from the panel. Boba Fett, pointing at Han's face, thank you for listening. I like you better this way. Fett walks away. He raises 2 fingers as a farewell gesture without looking back. Boba Fett, it looks like I'll have to wait some more. As you know, Captain Solo, smugglers, and bounty hunters always get paid last in these parts. In Empire, everything that clicked the first time around clicked. Luke hanging upside down in the cave with his weapons stuck in the ice and out of reach was symbolic. Our heroes' lives were about to get upended. Of course, that tip-off was forgotten when his eyes went blank. He extended his hand and the lightsaber began to shake. When it flew toward his hand, I gasped. The Force had grown stronger inside Luke between movies. That's why it was so exasperating to see him regress in Jedi. C-3PO yells a warning, but he still falls to Hollywood's oldest trick, the collapsing floor trap, after being trained by frickin' Yoda. Didn't the Jedi Master teach him to levitate objects? Here's what should have happened. Luke tries to bargain with Jabba. C-3PO yells a warning. The floor drops away. The creatures in Jabba's court gasp. Luke's cloak billows as air rises from below. He has not dropped an inch. The crowd screams in terror as the claw of the Rancor below swipes out of reach. Yellow eyes peer from the darkness of the pit. Still levitating, Luke now commands Jabba to free Han. His face is beaded with sweat. The Force is strong in him, but he's not yet a master. Jabba downplays Luke's feet and orders the Gamorrean guards to attack. Their spikes can't reach him, so Bib Fortuna shoves a guard toward Luke. He dodges the hulking pig man, who breaks his fall by grabbing Luke's foot. Luke's concentration is broken, gravity takes over, Jabba laughs malevolently. In Dagobah, Yoda mentions another to Obi-Wan's ghost. For months, many speculated that Han's time frozen in carbonite could bring about some sort of Force-related spiritual awakening. I'm glad it didn't, but by making his return a near-religious experience, the mystery who could have lasted longer. How? Remember when Indiana Jones holds up the staff of Ra to find the Well of the Souls? How the chamber filled with light? The carbonite thawing could have been similar. Instead, that scene was very underwhelming. This would have worked best after Luke's capture, so slave girl Leia would have to wait until the sail barge scene. Well, that plot rewrite is only 37 years too late, but I always wanted to get it out there. I left out the torching Ewoks with flamethrowers bit because this letter is already way too long, and there are gentler, more sensitive souls in the Post-Geek Singularity than me. Love you all. As always, happy to be a connoisseur crewman in the starship USS Imagination, Captain Burnett. Victor Rosario from me. Bayamon, PR, Puerto Rico, USA. P.S. This Sunday, my Dallas Gunslingers go to the West Coast to face your Seattle Seahawks from the sea. Conan number 19, baby. 2 great quarterbacks and 2 great running backs. The shootout will be glorious. Good luck, Rob. Go Cowboys. By the way, Claudia is glad that you will redesign your coffee cup. Give me an address and we'll send you some world-class Puerto Rican coffee to brew and pour it in. Or pour in it. Well, Victor, it was a shootout yesterday. It certainly was. But happy to say that the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest emerged victorious. They emerged victorious, which was phenomenal. Actually, it was a great game, and I think anybody who watched it won. And I'll tell you, the Cowboys, man, they came close. They did come close. Let's see what you guys are saying over here in the chat. Willow, first of all, Jason S. He sent these in a day ago, but I wasn't here. Jason S. says, let's get real, Rob. President Trump never put kids in cages, i.e. in dog kennels, and you know that, as the kids in cages occurred in 2014 under President Obama and Biden. If you really care about the issue and not just this smear of Trump's good name, then call out Obama and Hayden Joe by name for locking up kids in cages in 2014 and criticize them. As far as the support of illegal aliens taking jobs away from U.S. citizens, I think that's rather un-American, and it's putting U.S. citizens as second-class citizens in their own country. I've known many people who've lost out on jobs over the years because employers were secretly bringing in thousands of illegal aliens from the border for decades while telling U.S. citizens they were never hiring. The U.S. citizens all found out about it when they got busted by the FBI. Let's put the millions of U.S. citizens out of work now into jobs being taken by illegal aliens. Why do you think it's good that U.S. citizens are forced to compete for jobs against illegal aliens? Well, Jason, not really the purview of this show. But since you asked, and since I did bring it up, I mean, look, I live in California, and a lot of our economy is, what keeps it running is our immigration with our brothers and sisters from south of the border. And for the most part, in the 32 years I've lived in Los Angeles, I've had pretty great experiences with all kinds of people, very industrious people, immigrants that have done all kinds of things. Do I believe in illegal immigration? No. I don't think anybody believes in illegal immigration. I think people want to immigrate to this country legally. But the entire history of this country is one of the last 200-300 years. It's all been immigration. You know, people have immigrated from all over the place. whether it was Italy, whether it was Ireland, whether it was Scandinavia. I mean, there's enclaves around the world that are full of descendants of immigrants to this country. And I do believe in immigration. I believe in legal immigration as well. But on the other hand, when you have people, we have war-torn areas, and especially in places in Central America, places in Mexico where a criminal element has taken over cities and towns, and there's incredible violence, and people that are fleeing are like all immigrants throughout time, or refugees throughout time. They're trying to find a better life for themselves and their children. I think that's the American way. And I think that the idea that we're going to build walls and we're going to, when I say put kids in cages, I mean, yes, it wasn't exactly like dog kennels, although I'm sure there's some of that somewhere happening. But the fact is, our whole approach to immigration, especially the southern border, and the things that were being said during this Trump administration. Look, Donald Trump's been a fixture in my life. I've been hearing about Donald Trump for 35 years. I mean, in the 80s, he was a big thing, too. The Art of the Deal. I mean, you heard all about him. And it's not me. If you go back to Donald Trump has 40 years of well-documented business practices. And frankly, he's a guy that I've always thought was a little bit of a buffoon. And I'm shocked that he became president of the United States. And I don't think he's particularly done a great job. I mean, he's still half of the administration. He never filled certain positions. And I think he was ill-equipped. He'd never served in political life before. And I thought he was ill-equipped to do what he did. Now, it's not to say it was a total disaster. There are things that he's done that I think were, I guess, helpful. But for the most part, rolling back environmental, to me, in my mind, he's done things that were not great. And especially in terms of the environment and pulling out of things like the climate accords and all of these things. I understand he's trying to help business, but it was all very short-sighted. So, but anyway, you know, I'm like, to my mind, it's what example are we going to set for the rest of the world? We have not set a great example over the last 4 years. I mean, America is still, I think, the greatest country in the world from a theoretical standpoint. But we fall short in a lot of different areas. And it's not just because Donald Trump was president either. There's a lot of people, we have a whole legacy, really since the Reagan era, and even, things changed. As we came out of Vietnam in the 70s and entered the 80s, the world sort of completely shifted. And I would say that the era that we're in now really began in earnest with Reagan's presidency, but whatever. I mean, it's not part of this show, but I just think that, you have to ask yourself if by stuff that I do say that every human being is a miracle and the most precious resource in the universe, because there's only one of each of us. There's only one of us. So our first and foremost mission in life should be to make life better for the human beings that are here. And I think, look, I believe in being environmental. If you're not an environmentalist, I don't understand. We live in a closed system. Anything that pollutes this closed system is a danger not just to anyone that's near the pollution, but it's a danger to everybody on this planet. Just because you throw something away outside doesn't mean it's going to not come back and bite you in the ass later. I have never understood why we don't take, like this idea that, well, there's an acceptable level of pollution in the atmosphere. Why is there pollution in the atmosphere at all? Like, why do we allow that to happen? Where do we think it's going to go? It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, whatever is created, whatever smoke is created, I mean, the smoke that gets created, the fires, it now is all part of my yard. How many burnt up animals have I been breathing for the last 2 weeks? I mean, it's we have to start thinking in the long term. But, I don't want to get into a political argument about all this stuff. But I just don't think that the way certain people are being treated, that we're looking for a better life, we're treated well on our southern border. And I don't think it's not the best of America. And the way the Trump administration and Trump himself has frequently talked about people coming up from the southern border, murderers, rapists, drug dealers. I mean, and painting all of them with that kind of a brush. I don't think it was helpful. Willow is here and says, I don't think that 3 bad episodes of Game of Thrones would have been nearly as detrimental if they had happened in the middle of the series. Well, I agree with that 100%. But because it was the conclusion, knowing how the story ends and what happens to all the characters just really sours the entire series for people that were invested in the show. However, I don't think Benioff and Wise deserve to be called talentless hacks after all the great work they've done up until the final season. Hopefully they've learned from this experience. Listen, I agree with you. I think Weiss and Benioff are very talented guys, and the fact that Game of Thrones was as good as it was is great. And they had, if they had George R. R. Martin's books to work off of, I'm sure they would have had the ending would have been better. So the 3-body problem, I don't know if they're doing all 3 books, but if they are, I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. I think they're going to do a fine job. I think the material is very heady. I think the material is very difficult to adapt, to be honest. But we'll see what happens. When it comes down to Game of Thrones, I mean, you know, a question that was posed in the first episode of Thrones is, what does the Night's King want? What do the White Walkers want? And what are they doing? Why are they marching? And, you know, there is no answer. And that was a question that was posed at the beginning of the show, and it was never answered. And they give you a final episode where you think, oh my God, the long night or whatever, we're going to find out the answer. There's going to be some revelatory answer. It didn't come. So that's a major plot question that runs through 8 seasons of a show, and it's never answered. You're waiting for Cersei and the Breaker of Chains, the Mother of Dragons, to square off. I don't know what that was going to look like, but that never happens either. And Cersei's final season, I mean, she was basically sitting in a window for those final 6 episodes. She's been this incredibly conniving, powerful. I mean, she blew up the High Sparrow and all that. That was amazing. And the last season just squandered her character. It was like, wait, what? What? Just, yeah, it was bad. Not good. But yeah, I'm pulling for Weiss and Benioff. I think that we got 7 seasons and 3 episodes of season 8 that I really, really liked. I thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, did season 6 and 7, were they a little up and down? Sure, there's a lot of little logic problems. Dragons traveling around where they were fast. Yes, I see all of that, but for the most part, I enjoyed the show. I just wish those last 6 episodes were a little better. Mads of Jada says, lately I've been reading old Kubrick interviews on Napoleon, and it was fun to see him mention the importance of verisimilitude. Yes, I mean, anybody who uses that word, you can see why. I mean, hearing it, the first time I heard it was from Richard Donner in regards to making Superman Returns. Superman the movie, but making him come on screen. And then Kubrick has used it, and yes, I love the word. And absolutely. Richard Karate sends in a super chat, actually 3 super chats, and says, first, as a Star Trek fan, what did you think of Deep Space Nine? I love Deep Space Nine, especially seasons 4, 5, and 6, and 7. I think when it gets cranked up, I think Star Trek Deep Space Nine is fantastic. It's my favorite modern Star Trek series. I know a lot of people can't hang with it, but I really think it is great. I don't think it betrays Roddenberry's idea of a positive future. Look, the Alpha Quadrant never asked for the Dominion War to happen, but once it did happen, you have to step up. And one of the great things about Deep Space Nine is, how do you retain our values? How do you retain being the kind of people that we want to be in the face of a galactic conflict that could lead to Armageddon? And I think Deep Space Nine does a great job. And I also think, you know, if you see there's character changes, there's redemption, there's all kinds of things that happen. It's a very Deep Space Nine, especially in the last 4 seasons, is a very sophisticated television show. And the way it juggles the primary characters and the secondary characters and the guest characters, it's an amazing bit of televised science fiction, and I love it. Richard Karate sent in another super chat and said, thought on the show Airwolf, and could we get a movie remake now? You know, I never really watched Airwolf that much. I thought the Airwolf itself was cool, but I just didn't. I didn't watch much TV. Once I got heavily into movies starting in the early 80s and had a VCR, I never watched TV much. Unless it was something that I got hooked on, like Miami Vice or Wise Guy or something like that, or in the 90s like Babylon 5. But so I never really watched Airwolf, although I did have a great die-cast 1/18th scale die-cast metal Airwolf that I sold to a friend of mine because I like the Airwolf itself. Richard Karate goes on and sends another super chat in and says, with this supposed movie coming out, where they're computerizing James Dean in the movie, if it works, can they CGI Christopher Reeve back in and make the DC EU Superman? Your thoughts? I hate the idea of that. I was asked, what about that deep fake video that's going around that's putting Shatner, Nimoy, and DeForest Kelly into J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 09. I hate those ideas. I mean, one of the things I love about movies is the actors, is the performances that you're getting. You know that you're seeing real actors giving you, processing something. It's art. You're acting for film. It's different than acting for theaters, but it's art, and you're seeing a performer create through what he does or she does an artistic performance. And I wouldn't want that tainted by deep fake technology or putting in a CG James Dean. It's not really James Dean. So no matter how good it looks or sounds, it's not James Dean. And I don't know if I would never be able to get past that. And I hope that we don't. So I'm not excited about seeing a dead James Dean recreated for the movies. S. Beam, who sent in a few poster entries. Hello, R&B. Hope your day is going well. You read my Conan letter last week, and at the end you said it was important to receive letters of remembrance. I am curious your thoughts, what makes them seem important. I will be sending another letter real soon. Well, one of the things that I really like is I think when somebody sends me a letter, like your letter about Conan, that has something... when did you see it? I mean, you're telling us a story. You're telling us a story when you first saw a movie, how much it meant to you. And I think there's meaning in that story, and all of us can glean different things from that story. It'll mean different things to different people, but I think those kinds of letters are what this community is all about. I love hearing how people got drawn to certain things and when they saw certain things and how old they were and how did it hit them and what did it mean. And because I'm sure that's true of a lot of people. So that's one of the things that I find to be very interesting. So that's why I love hearing that. I mean, I love hearing the stories. When did people first come to things? And speaking of that, in terms of remembering things, there's something that I wanted to bring up. And before I do that, I need to get some photographic assistance here. One of our members, and let me see if I can find, one of our members, John, or as you might know him, JPRPH1, his father, Carmelo, was the official first father of the Burnettwork. And his father, Carmelo, passed away. And I'd like to show a picture of him. And my heart goes out, and I'm sure all of our hearts go out to John and his family at this time. I don't know if he's watching the show right now, but here's a picture that is not the right picture that I want to show. Hang on, let me get the picture that I would really like to show of Carmelo so you can all know who it is that I'm talking about. And I'll show it. Here is a picture of Carmelo. I think this was taken recently, but I'm not sure. So here is John's father, Carmelo. He was the official father of the Burnettwork. So I offer my condolences, John, to you and your family. And I know that you love your father very much. So there he is. Anyway, so I want to say that. That's why I think it's important to remember where you were, what you did, how you came to it. And plus, those are great stories to tell. Nick Parker sends in a tip and says, "What's up, Rob? So I know people in movie circles think that Bruce Willis is the actor that phones in most of his roles, but I have a name that I think beats Bruce. Rob, would you agree that Steven Seagal has probably phoned in the most roles? I know Steve was never winning an Oscar or anything, but these days he's not doing any movie that requires him to leave his shades home, speed walk, look surprised, or do any moves besides his signature Aikido throw, arm breaker, or block and jab. Don't get me wrong, Rob. I like that Steven Seagal's recent movies give me good laughs because of these things, and I'll always respect Steven Seagal as an iconic martial artist and action star, but should that stop us from expecting more from an icon? I have to tell you, Nick, 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to do some re-editing on a Steven Seagal movie, and I saw the footage, and it was, let's just say, disappointing to say the least. And I understand, I mean, Bruce Willis is getting that paycheck. He probably, he makes those grindstone movies or whatever, and he probably gets a cool $1 million or something for those, and they sell them foreign, and they make them, and they employ people and give people a chance to direct and all that. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to get paid and work the least amount, I just don't understand that. But yeah, Steven Seagal, it was painful to sometimes watch his movies, especially the one I had to edit. I mean, he didn't even know his lines. He would every take he would say something different. It was a nightmare to edit. But yeah, it bums me out. And I keep going back to his first movie, not Good Guys Wear Black. That was Chuck Norris. Above the Law. I liked Above the Law. The first 4 Steven Seagal movies are pretty good. Hard to Kill. And then, what can you say? He became the master of girth. And it was a bummer. Sujith says, the Wisecrack YouTube channel has an amazing video of what went wrong with Game of Thrones. Sujith, I will check that out. Yeah, it just bums me out. Alexander Wilson sends in a tip and says, calling Benioff and Weiss talentless hacks is like saying Jay-Z is a bad rapper. Game of Thrones viewership was at the moon by the end and is still one of the most streamed shows in 2020. Jay-Z said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Jay-Z is correct. And you know what? Jay-Z has Beyonce, so who's winning? I think that's a good thing. It's good to point out. Yeah, I don't. Weiss and Benioff gave us some incredible entertainment, some of the best TV ever done, and some of the most ambitious TV ever done. People can't forget that. I do find it curious how they ended their own show. I don't get it, but what are you going to say? Yeah. Jeff Yerke sends in a super chat and says, hi, Rob. Kubrick was the first director where I grokked there was such a thing as a film director. He was my gateway drug. A lot of this stems from his early years as a look photographer. Live long and prosper. I totally agree with you, and you're absolutely correct about that. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think Stanley Kubrick is certainly my hero, my favorite director, because of that very reason. Guy's amazing. Let's hi, Rob and fellow movie connoisseurs. Yet another letter from Richard Van Tulliver, not the Richard, a.k.a. Grootbas 1964. I would like to bring to your attention a movie I think most people have never heard from, maybe even the connoisseurs in the chat. Et tu, Roberto? It's a French movie. No chat. Don't leave yet because it's French. You might like this one. I actually own this movie. The movie premiered in 2010 and is directed by Luc Besson. For me, any movie by Luc Besson gets an automatic +1. And the title is The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec. The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec. Yes. I like this movie. It's not, some of you may think the title seems familiar. That's correct. The movie is loosely based on the comic books from Jacques Tardy. Disclaimer. Dear Robert, before you continue, read the disclaimer. In the review below, I will be using some words which the social justice warriors and snowflake community do not like to hear. I will not be held responsible for any harm done to you. mentally or physically, by these social justice warriors, snowflake mobsters. Do you, Robert Meyer Burnett, being of sound body and mind, agree to these terms? If so, you can continue to read this review. If I was a marketeer, I would describe this movie in a few words, a catchphrase. It would sound something like this: the extraordinary adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec, Indiana Jones with boobs, funnier than Inspector Clouseau. Well, the tone has been set. Let me first introduce some of the main characters. The lead role goes to Louise Bourgoin. Again, it's French. I can't say it. Adele Blanc-Sec. She's a journalist and a travel book writer, famous with her peers and readers, also a strong woman that doesn't take shit from anyone. Yes, social justice warriors, mobsters, yet another movie with a strong woman in it. I almost forgot. She's hot. I can see Robert thinking now, Richard, how do you know this? Well, Robert, there's a scene in the movie where Adele, in front of a mummy, takes off all of her oops, almost spoiled the scene for you. Watch the movie if you want to know more. Another main character is Jack Nercessian, who plays Professor Marie-Joseph Esperandieu. Rumors have it that he's mastered telepathy and can raise the dead. He also seems responsible for awakening a petrosaur, a flying dinosaur. The third main actor is Giles Lelouch, who plays Inspector Albert Capone. Inspector Capone isn't the smartest cop at the Sûreté, the French National Police, but he gets the job done with the aid of his subordinates and a lot of luck. Now for the review itself, I'll keep it short because I don't want to spoil too much. Paris, 1912. During an experiment with telepathy, Professor Esperandieu hatches an ancient petrosaur egg located in the Gallery of Paleontology at the Anatomy Compare. The petrosaur flies away toward his freedom and on its way sees a cab and attacks it, killing a former prefect and his mistress in the process. The president of France hears about this and orders the Sûreté to investigate. Here, the bumbling Inspector Capone is set to solve the case. Meanwhile, Adele is in Egypt searching for a mummy called Patmosis. The mummy was the alleged physician of Ramses II. Adele believes that he can cure her very ill sister, Agatha. Her sister is critically injured because of a freak accident. Adele succeeds in her mission and returns to France. Now she must find Professor Marie-Joseph Esperandieu. She thought that would be simple. Not. He's been put in jail because of his involvement with the petrosaur. Adele tries to break him out of jail, first posing as a lawyer. She doesn't succeed. After half a dozen hilarious attempts in the most ridiculous disguises, she does succeed. This scene reminded me of Peter Sellers in his Pink Panther movies. Adele asks Professor Marie-Joseph Esperandieu to help her with curing her sister. He agrees and resurrects the mummy that's placed in her house. When the mummy awakens, they're in for a shock. No, not the kind you get when you're watching a horror movie. The mummy is not who Adele thought it would be. He's not a physician, but a nuclear physicist. I deal with science and equations, not medicine, he says. However, he comes up with a plan, and one that involves many more mummies. Here, I will stop the review. I skipped a lot so you can watch yourself without knowing too much. The reason why I recommend this movie, and like for you to watch this one, is simple. It's something every movie should aspire to do. It's entertaining. The world we live in is sometimes harsh and cruel, and the universe, my friend, is indifferent to all of our suffering. This movie transported me to another place and entertained me for 90-plus minutes, forgetting about all and cheering me up. Will it be a classic in due time? No. Is it a bad movie? No. Is it a good movie? Maybe. That maybe depends on your taste of movies, the kind of humor you like. And here's a link to the movie trailer. I'll put that in the live chat. Here is a link to the live chat to that movie. I like this movie, by the way. It's goofy. For those who want to buy the movie here in the Netherlands, it wasn't available, so I imported the Blu-ray from the UK. It's in French with English subtitles, so you may have to use your Google Voodoo skills to find it. Rob and everyone else in this YouTube stream, I hope you like this letter and the movie I promoted in it. Kind regards, Just Richard. P.S. Two of my favorite quotes. In the darkness you cannot see. In the light you are blinded. It is within the shadows that things become clear. Live long and prosper. Well, thanks, Richard. I appreciate that, and I like the movie. So, and I, too, love Luc Besson films. I'll watch anything he makes. By the way, I'll tell this story again since you brought up Luc Besson so I can name drop. When I was the critic at large for Sci-Fi Universe magazine back in the 90s, we had to decide on the summer movie issue, was Independence Day going to get the cover or was The Fifth Element going to get the cover? And Luc Besson, while he was still editing, he was still finishing up the editorial of The Fifth Element, he was editing in a house in Malibu. So he invited us to this house in Malibu to hang out, and he showed us this behind-the-scenes video that he edited to Prince's song Pussy Control, and it was awesome. And he was very funny because he said, here I am. I went to Malibu and rented this house, and it's on a private beach. I thought there would be girls everywhere, but there's no girls here at all. There's only the occasional celebrity, and I don't need that. I want girls. And he was very funny. And I talked to him about his first feature, Le Dernier Combat, and he was surprised I even knew what it was. And he gave me, they put out books in France, these big oversized books of frames from his movies, like just the frames. Lucas did the same thing. I have a frame, that Star Wars frames book. But so he gave me one on Le Dernier Combat, and he signed it. I have it right over there on my shelf. So there you go. Jason Webster writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. I hope everybody within the Post-Geek Singularity had a great weekend. Disney's live-action take on The Legend of Mulan has been released on Disney Plus and theatrically in select markets, including China, where it is underperformed. There are more than one reason for this. One largely significant factor is a current and world-changing issue that has caught everybody off guard. It should be noted that it has performed as well in the Chinese market as Tenet has. It's way too simplistic, not to mention objective, to just say it is because of a boycott. There are numerous indicators of which the key problem and the one constant and biggest immediate threat to profitability for all films is in the form of a global pandemic, COVID-19. Many countries around the world, including China, are experiencing a second or third wave now. Naturally, people are very hesitant to return to the theater-going experience. If all films slated for release within the next 3 to 5 months adhere to their release dates, they will lose a lot of money for their respective studios, as we have seen, that's why they've been pulled off their release dates. That is just the reality of the situation the world is facing. That is why recently we've been hearing films such as Wonder Woman and Black Widow, among others, have announced yet further rescheduling, pushed from their release dates to sometime either earlier in the middle of 2021. No doubt the Bond film No Time to Die will do the same. All studios can do in the interim is limit the financial damage for films they release now. Also, keep in mind, Disney's Mulan is one of 5 films that will have told the story of the legendary Chinese figure within the past 9 months. I didn't know that. Other films already released this year on the Mulan legend include 3 live-action Chinese films entitled Matchless Mulan, Mulan the Heroine, and Mulan Legend, as well as an animated film entitled Kung Fu Mulan. The 2 live-action Chinese films did fare worse than Disney's Mulan in China. Also, over the last few years, there have been 2 Chinese television series entitled Mulan in 2012 and The Legend of Hua Mulan. Needless to say, that's a lot covering the character. All of these variations of the legend are still extremely fresh in the conscience of the people, so forgive the Chinese if they seem a little Mulan'd out. That is before one accounts for the fact that there will be a 36-episode television series entitled Mulan Renewal that will be released next year. To say the movie's performance in China is a result of producers giving the lead role to the wrong actress because she is not popular and a bad actress is disingenuous. In fact, the lead actress, Lu Yafei, is popular. She received acclaim and popularity for her roles in the television series such as Demigods and Semi-Devils, Chinese Paladin, and The Return of the Condor Heroes. She received the Golden Eagle Goddess Award at the 6th Golden Eagle Awards. The awards ceremony is one of the 3 most prestigious television award ceremonies in China. She won the Best Actress Award at the 5th Macau International Film Festival for her performance in The Assassins. Her performance in the film The Third Way of Love led to her winning Most Anticipated Actress at the 16th Chinese Film Media Awards. However, there were some comments attributed to her about the events in Hong Kong that would have made a slight contribution to its sluggish performance in China. Some people have criticized Disney for not hiring an Asian director. However, it should be noted the studio had met with Ong Lee to discuss the possibility of him directing the film, but he politely declined due to commitments with another project. They also held discussions with actor-director Zhang Wen about helming the project before Nikki Caro was ultimately hired to direct. Wen has appeared in wuxia films such as The Emperor's Shadow, The Warriors of Heaven and Earth, and The Lost Bladesman. He had directed films such as the Chinese action comedy Hidden Man. So it's not like they hadn't tried to obtain an Asian director to helm the film. Though the film was almost entirely filmed in New Zealand, there were 20 locations within China chosen to film scenes depicting landscapes and geography unique to the country, one of which was in the province of Xinjiang, which is the largest province-level division of China, covering some, 1,664,000 kilometers, which is 642,000 square miles, As we now know, it was a mistake to have chosen it as one of the locations. The mistake could have been offset if Disney had organized that 10% of each purchase of Mulan on Disney Plus, though premium access would be donated to a humanitarian organization located within China, such as the China Care Foundation. However, this something could still do. Though there may be a silver lining for Mulan in the form of having launched it on their own streaming service, Disney Plus, executives at the studio are pleased with its performance on the streaming service where it is available for a fee through Platinum Access. It is not just anywhere near what they would have hoped for or were confident of achieving before the pandemic. I believe there were industry projections that the film would have made between $700 million and $800 million US under normal circumstances. So, not a $1 billion film, let alone what The Lion King made last year, which reached $1.65 billion upon completion of its theatrical run. No one knows just how well Mulan has performed and will continue to perform on Disney Plus until the studio discloses the financial data on the film, which will not be available for some time, if at all. Up until then, all anybody can do is guess. Apart from film, there were numerous entertainment options that were severely hampered by COVID-19. Theater, sports, concerts, and similar events all have suffered either directly or indirectly from the effects of COVID-19 on the population, and it will take some time to gauge the lasting effect of the virus on social and commercial aspects of society. For example, just within the film industry alone, there will be a lot of figuring out to be undertaken. How many theaters will cease operations? It's hard to say. How will it affect the business model of surviving theaters and studios going forward? Will studios have to reduce their budgets for tentpole films going forward? And will they have to limit the number of such blockbuster films they produce each year? So many questions need answers. As for myself, I enjoyed Mulan for what it was. It is a typical pleasant offering from the House of Mouse, but by no means great. The production design, effects, and score were all terrific, and the acting was solid. They all complemented each other. Why would anybody expect anything else from Disney? As I've said, the movie is fine, but not great, and when you're going to release an epic, legendary, heroic figure that has such huge anticipation and expectations from the general public, it needs to be great. That is not to say the film does have its faults. Every film ever made has its own imperfections. No film is completely flawless. I think there's a few. I believe this film is a little too conscious of four things: studio reputation, its target audience, appeasing the Chinese market, as that is where the animated film flopped, and its running time. Finally, it was a mistake to announce just days before it was due to release on Disney Plus that it would be free to subscribers from December. It should not have been made available free to subscribers until March of next year. I totally agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. I said studio reputation because Disney made its name on the back of producing and releasing films that were geared toward children and families as its key demographics. They have been way too conscious of it ever since. I said running time because if they had allowed themselves a running time of approximately 140 minutes, it would have provided the opportunity of incorporating a little more from the source material. They covered a few elements within the story too briefly. Anyway, those are my opinions of Mulan. I hope you and the wonderful members of the Post-Geek Singularity enjoy the week. As Bill and Ted and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would say, tubular, dude, totally. Go up to Zoom and shred the waves, brah. That's from Jason Webster. Thanks, Jason Webster. I appreciate that. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown says, uh-oh. This is going to be a hot take, people. Hold on to your butts. Yo, Rob, I hope you're good. I rewatched Man of Steel today. I recall when watching in the cinema, I thought the first act was poorly acted and one too many buildings got smashed in the third act. A disappointment. After the rewatch, it's pretty good, to be honest. Apart from, again, too many buildings getting leveled. The time is right for a great Superman film. There you go. Somebody who also liked Man of Steel. I know, it's a hot one. Donnie Pearson is here. Donnie says, hello, Rob. This afternoon during Hasbro's PulseCon 2020 came a new trailer for Power Rangers Dino Fury. I've been a Power Rangers fan since the Mighty Morphin days. I love it so dearly, and despite the fact that I don't have Nickelodeon until the day I moved to Sierra Vista, Arizona, and I'm stoked about the new series. If there is the first episode available on Nickelodeon's YouTube channel, I plan to watch that. Hopefully, it would still stream on Paramount Plus on a streaming next day basis, in addition to the Saturday morning airings on Nickelodeon. Air rings. Otherwise, I might wait till Dino Fury is available on Netflix. It won't stream on Paramount Plus. What did you think of the new Dino Fury trailer? Thanks, and may the power protect you. Regards, Donnie. P.S. I hope you received my video I originally created for your 500th show. I thought I played it on the 500th show. Otherwise, I would either find a way to re-upload it or do my new video for either your 525th show or 550th show. Maybe it was the music, Donnie. Maybe that was why I didn't play it, because I didn't know if the music was cleared. I don't remember. I thought I played it. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. We'll have to look. But yeah, send it again. Put an asterisk by it or something. I have not seen the new Dino Fury trailer. Yeah, I don't know much about the Power Rangers myself. I have a great Kamen Rider figure, though, from the very first Kamen Rider quarter scale figure. It's great. It's great, man. Let's see. Alexander Wilson says, I think Nicolas Cage has phoned in some performances. Like, damn, he's been in some of the worst movies I've ever seen. He was one of my favorites growing up as a kid. Yeah, he had a lot of tax problems. He's another one, cashing those paychecks. You're right on that, Alexander. Sujith sends in a super chat and says, Do you think the bulk beings of 5 dimensions in Interstellar were an inspiration from the prophet beings in Deep Space Nine? No, I don't think so necessarily. I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. I think the idea of extra-dimensional beings is kind of a staple of science fiction, so I wouldn't necessarily think that. But you never know. Christopher Nolan's a smart guy. He must have seen Deep Space Nine. Super Surreal says, Sir Robert Meyer Burnett. Sook, let the spice flow. I'm so excited about Dune and your Chom t-shirt. Yeah, this is the Chom Corporation from Dune. A lot of people don't know what that is, but clearly you do. I'm so excited about Dune and your Chom t-shirt. Does all things, bruh. You and Lord Campia are my daily quarantine heroes. Like button smash. Well, thank you. I think everybody should smash the like button. Go and do it now. Like Davey504 says. Slap like now. Yes. Well, thank you for that. And I like the fact that you like my Chom shirt. Chom is the company that harvests spice, or has the equipment to harvest spice. Bob Quall, our man Bob Quall is here. I don't know if you people have gone and seen on Bob Quall's Mega-Rilla. Bob puts on one hell of a Halloween display, and I guess it's already up this year. He's got it rocking and rolling before October itself rolls around. But he built the Mega-Rilla, this giant gorilla that's going to be, it comes out of the roof of his house. I want to go hang out in his place on Halloween. I mean, I guess you could socially distance from trick-or-treaters. You could even have some, like, cool, like, weird armature thing that could come out and, like, here you go, little child, and drop it off, something like that. But you got to go check it out. Bob says, suggestion for the final views of October. Obvious stalwarts, but they are my verisimilitude trio. 1976, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, and, of course, The Exorcist. Or an Exorcist trio. Exorcism of Emily Rose, Exorcist 3, and The Exorcist. Well, I'll tell you, Elizabeth and I have already been discussing. We are going to have unwinding about movies in October. It's going to be all horror movies. Now, we don't have the schedule set in stone yet, but I can tell you that Mario Bava's Black Sunday, Rosemary's Baby, Robert Eggers' The Witch, Midsummer, because Elizabeth hasn't seen Midsummer yet. Those are on the list. The Exorcist and Exorcist 3 might be on there. We might do a double header because I love The Exorcist, but I also love Exorcist 3. And yeah, so I don't know how many we're going to do, but I can tell you we're doing those. So we're going to have a heady mix of classics and modern classics and older classics and that kind of thing. But yeah, we're doing that. We're doing it, Bob. Those are good suggestions. Oh, also The Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you guys haven't seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, actually of in the modern age, The Witch and The Autopsy of Jane Doe are two of my favorite. Actually, let me amend that. I think my trifecta, my 3 favorite horror movies over the last couple of years, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, The Invitation, and The Witch. Those 3 movies. Yep, those 3 movies. Yeah, we should put The Invitation on there. If you haven't seen The Invitation, okay, don't even read. Karen Kusama directed it. Don't read anything about it. I think it's still on Netflix. Don't even read the description. The Invitation is one of those movies that you just gotta watch. I don't think that I'm going to be able to convince Elizabeth to watch Martyrs. Martyrs is another movie. I got to tell you about Martyrs since you asked about horror films. So there are a few movies in my life that I've read reviews, I've read articles about them, and I never understood reading these articles, like, what is this movie about? And Pascal Luger, Martyrs was one of those movies. I kept reading about this movie, Martyrs. What is this about? Even when I'd read these articles, I still couldn't figure out what this movie is about. I will say this. There are a few times when I'm watching movies where my jaw hit the floor. I went like, no way. Martyrs is one of those movies. If you guys haven't seen, I'm not talking about the shitty American or English language remake. You got to go for the French version of Martyrs. I warn you, it is not pleasant to watch, but it certainly was intriguing, and I found it strangely poetic at the end, to be honest. I don't think I could I tried showing it to Elizabeth, and she was not happy with me. I think we got 20 minutes in. That was all she wrote. Kind of glad. If I'd taken her the whole way, it would have been bad. Throgostophiles sends in a tip and says, hello, Rob, and the free people of Zion within the Post-Geek Singularity. Now you make me want to go to a rave. Sending positive vibes to John and family on the passing of his father. Robert, I haven't been around much. I seem to miss Arrow Flash Gordon. I seem to miss Arrow Flash Gordon 2-set winner Brian Hepburn. Want to mail them all together. Oh, you know what? We got to figure that out. Yeah. Did I tell you the second one? I don't know. Yeah, you got to mail them all out. That's our winners. Yes, they have to go out. We will do that, Throg. John. Speaking of John, John is here. John says thank you very much for the wonderful memorial for my dad. This Carmelo. Let's look at Carmelo again, John. There's your dad. Thanks very much for that wonderful memorial for my dad. He was, after all, the official father of the Burnettwork and Robservations. Love to you, Liz, and to all members of the Post-Geek Singularity. Well, right back to you too, sir. All of our love and respect to your family at this difficult time. And, I mean, clearly, though, I would take solace in this. Your dad obviously knew what a great son he had in you, and clearly you had a great and special relationship with him. I'd love nothing more than to see my father again. It's been a long time. This next letter comes from Jared Snyder. Mendelsohn Schmendelsohn. Hi, Rob. Maybe we just live in a gilded age of lazy people. That's true. In the 1960s, Orson Welles was an obese man in a cape, smoking cigars, shilling for wine. I will serve no wine before it's time. And appearing endlessly as a talk show guest. The John Candy parody actually cuts too close to the bone. Welles wasn't getting films made, so unless you were a film student, you could not see his films. Only when I moved near a small art house cinema did I finally find out that long before Welles created his TV persona, he was the director of Citizen Kane, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Third Man, and The Lady from Shanghai. Cut to today. Now I can binge watch Kubrick's films from the comfort of my living room. I can read interviews with Kubrick as well as articles and critiques written about Kubrick. Yet Mendelssohn's article shows no evidence he did any research, nor any familiarity with Kubrick's work. I get your frustration, and I understand your major point, that this misinformed article might steer someone away from the great filmmaker. It just makes me wish Candy was still around to skew this kind of shoddy work. John Candy, Jared M. Snyder. Yeah, look, that's the thing that really bothers me. The thing is, I took journalism. I wrote for my high school newspaper. I took journalism in high school and took journalism in college. And the idea was, when you were a journalist and you were covering something, that you had a responsibility to your readership to provide the best scholarship possible with the articles that you would write. And I hate now that everybody has their voice. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, or Sarah, Jane, and Karen can write whatever the hell the article they want to write. And there is there's no editorial board to check it. There's no fact checkers. You can write whatever you want. And then when somebody writes an article that is so ridiculously wrong and untrue, it will shape people's opinions, and it's wrong. And I hate that, especially, look, on this show, what I deal with is entertainment. It's not the only thing I care about, but I definitely, that article was just lame, and it is not helpful. It does not help the society at large. It really does not. Jeff Yerke is here. Jeff Yerke says, and by the way, Jeff Yerke is a graphic designer, and as you might know from earlier in the show, this is Jeff Yerke's second submission to the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And I love this, and this is very cool. Hey guys, Jeff Yerke here, loyal Burnettwork supporter and graphic designer. Attached, please find my second and final submission for the International Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. This is my original design that Rob and I talked about on Twitter. I decided to go ahead and make it. It's a big, meaningful galaxy. I've attached it as a PDF file. Let me know if you've received it. Well, Jeff, I have received it, and here it is on the show. What a great idea. I love it. And I love the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival logo that you have there. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for your other submission, too, which is also very cool. I've been very blown away by the creativity that you people have shown. It's been amazing. Pedro is here. Pedro Ferreira. I think it's Ferreira. It's not Ria. Ferreira. Well, maybe. I always say it wrong, Pedro. You know what I mean. Good to see you again. Hi, Rob. I understand you did a live stream about Ridley Scott recently, and I almost forgot to relate to you a story a former work colleague told me involving him. I used to work for a telecommunications company, and I knew a guy there. Let's call him Steven. So Steven told me once that he'd done work experience for Ridley Scott. On the surface, it's quite an exciting opportunity. Unfortunately, the day Steven started work experience for Mr. Scott was also the day he quit. On his first day, he was asked by someone in charge to clean Mr. Scott's office shower. My first thought when he retold this was, hopefully Steven isn't going to find Ridley in the shower. But no, the shower needed cleaning, and Steven felt he had come to learn about the process of filmmaking, not clean someone's shower. Oh, your friend Steven doesn't understand. He was learning about the process of filmmaking by cleaning someone's shower. That's all part of it. I cannot confirm this, but I think some hairs in the shower, otherwise known as Ridley grams, may have been the deciding factor in Steven leaving that day. Sorry, Rob, I couldn't resist that last bit. Come on, man. You know what? Cleaning showers is cleaning showers, and if you're a PA, that's what you got to do. Now, you have to understand, like when I started out as a PA, when I got out of film school, full of piss and vinegar, and I got my first job literally like a week later, 2 weeks later, working on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I just assumed I would be running around getting people coffee and taking the dry cleaner to the dry cleaners, which I actually never had to do, maybe twice. I did have to drop off some 8x10s of people that worked in the art department. I did have to drop off 8x10s to places, to casting offices and things during my daily work. So, Now, on a more serious note, I wanted to ask your thoughts on something relating to what you said about my previous letter concerning Star Trek Generations. To my last letter, you said I was not necessarily wrong to think Generations was a good movie. The same way I'm not necessarily in the right to say it's a terrific movie. As human beings, we take film in a subjective way. We're meant to receive some kind of emotional response. I love reviewing and critiquing movies, TV, and video games. My disability allows me to see movies in a way others don't. It's a daunting and frustrating experience writing reviews with my disabilities, and can take up to a day's worth of work sometimes to write a 2-page review on something. My disability means difficulty structuring ideas and a lot of procrastination. Well, in that sense, I too have difficulties. While I hate writing reviews, it's the end result that makes it worth it, that feeling of achievement, even if the mode of showing off my work is incredibly limited. Rotten Tomatoes, for instance, doesn't allow 2-page reviews, so I generally keep reviews to myself. I'm getting off topic, but my question was how far your response to my previous letter holds value when critiquing something. By their nature, critiquing something requires a mixture of subjective and objective reasoning. I already explained the subjective part, while the objective part is about standing back and looking at things from a detached point of view. If I review a CG animated movie and it's a genre I very much dislike due to changes in animation as an art form, however, providing a good review means being objective, putting aside preferences and giving a movie a fair opinion, being able to highlight its strengths. Far too often, a lot of reviews I read come across as mostly subjective. I like Generations. Its themes of mortality and the other production in itself hits me on a subjective level, yet objectively I can highlight its flaws. You yourself said you can appreciate bad movies because they're fun, but can they be bad if you're getting enjoyment from them? Yes, they can. I do not believe there is such a thing as a guilty pleasure. Here's the problem. If I go against general consensus that something is good or bad, does that make my opinion invalid even with my fair reasoning? Not if you're using fair reasoning, it doesn't. Citizen Kane is seen by a classic by many, but does a consensus of people saying that means their opinion is correct? Well, again, The Empire Strikes Back is seen as the best Star Wars movie, but who's to say that Return of the Jedi isn't based on fair reasoning and detractors, and they just have poor taste? Are critics and moviegoers just hopping on bandwagons? Does opinion hold less value if it's against general consensus? Me being able to see the merits of Generations is fine and everything but, even with film criticism degrees. How much leeway does that give me against respected critics like Roger Ebert and James Bernardelli, who thought otherwise? By the way, I forgot to mention in my last letter, the 1997 tie-in Generations PC game allowed you to defeat Sauron but save Kirk in the Enterprise D. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, Pedro, I've got NCC 1701H to introduce you to. No, I mean, I think that's a good... look. When it comes to personal taste, if you like a movie, you like the movie. No one can tell you that you can't like it. You like it. And you're liking it for whatever reason. Just like I like Star Crash. Do I think Star Crash is a good movie? No. But I love it anyway. I love it despite the fact maybe I like it because it's not good. I love Star Crash. It's not good. I know it's not good, but I personally love it. But then again, I would never try and convince people that they should like it or love it or whatever. I love Two Moon Junction. Two Moon Junction is a much better movie than Star Crash. As a matter of fact, Two Moon Junction is actually a pretty good movie. But I like it, not just because Sherilyn Fenn's nude in it, which is a big part of it. I like it because Richard Tyson's nude in it too, and he's a good-looking dude, and I like seeing him together. But I like the music. I like the southern fried nature of Louise Fletcher's performance. Burl Ives is in it. There's a lot of reasons. A young Mila Jovovich is in Two Moon Junction. I think it's ridiculous, but I love it, okay? I love Tough Turf. Is Tough Turf a great movie? I wouldn't call it a great movie, but I love Tough Turf. I do. It's ludicrous, but I do love it. I wouldn't tell everybody else to watch it, but I think, here's the thing. I think Citizen Kane is objectively a great film. You know, you can go analyze film history and everything, and all of that, but is it, oh wait, somebody told me that I should probably, Jeff's poster people are going to be like, are you showing favoritism to Jeff Yerke's poster? No, I'm not. I just got it. I haven't been able to make it favorite yet. But I think that there are objectively great films, and I think the general, if you can see by general consensus, the more different people who have different, if you have a bunch of different people that all say the same thing. And they say if you over the years, if you have 1,000 different people that say Citizen Kane is one of the best movies ever made, which they have, then you can see that there's an objectivity to that. There's an objectivity to the great movies. Casablanca, why do people think Lawrence of Arabia? Shawshank Redemption, Jaws, Seven. I mean, think about all these movies that people love. They love them for a reason because they're objectively good. Now, subjectively, that's your opinion. You don't have to, if you don't like an objectively good movie, that doesn't mean the movie isn't objectively good. That just means you don't like it. And that's okay. You should have, people are always accusing me of, only when it comes to Star Trek, of being a gatekeeper. I'm not preventing anybody. There's no gate. I'm not preventing anybody from liking anything they like. Everybody should like what they love. Like what you love and never apologize for it. Just like I never apologize for loving Star Crash. I don't apologize for loving Tough Turf. I walk the night. Come on, how do you not love Tough Turf? James Spader does lip sync, and it's not very good lip sync, but hey, it's while he's wearing a sweater at a Beverly Hills swanky, at the Beverly Hills Country Club, whatever. But you know, you have to recognize that in art, there is objectively great things. It's not all subjective. Not all subjective. Electron Star Collapse is here. Love these letters. Greetings, Rob. A part of me didn't want to bring this back up. But like you, it's hard for me to hear the commentary made against Stanley Kubrick and remain silent. That's right, goddammit. The moment I heard toxic masculinity in reference to Stanley Kubrick's legacy, a hush came from within my mind. As if all the multiverses converged to offer me a chance to search for the one where this statement might be true. And the quiet was broken when I looked forward and said, "Hold my bra. I believe a foreign substance has been introduced into my precious bodily fluids." Let me start with a little disclosure. I've only actually seen 4 of Kubrick's movies. What? From beginning to end. Spartacus, Dr. Strangelove, The Shining, and 2001. Of the 4, Spartacus is my least favorite, but let me qualify that as not exactly a bad thing by saying, I love you, Spartacus. My problem with Spartacus is that it simply didn't have Kubrick's style developed yet. Yeah, no, he took over that movie. He didn't develop that movie, so it's not, he directed it, but it's not a typical Stanley Kubrick film. He didn't have Kubrick's style developed yet, but it was a wonderful epic all the same, made even greater by Kirk Douglas's majesty in his work. But of all the movies that I have seen and tangentially understand from my understandings of his other work, like Clockwork Orange or Full Metal Jacket, is that Kubrick likes stories that examine the human condition, not simply hyper-masculinity. That's why Porky's isn't a part of his repertoire. 2001 is one of those movies that many people like to roll their eyes at for being pretentious. You know, pretentious like a film student who thinks of Stanley Kubrick as the propagator of toxic masculinity. I actually took the time to watch 2001 multiple times, though a few of those rewatches were while listening to Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here album. From a surface level view, it's a very strange and trippy movie. Try and peel back some of the layers and you can see the messages of existentialism throughout. This isn't a story about males, it's a story about humans. By the way, as a side note, when syncing Pink Floyd just right, I had a fun moment, specifically when Dave entered into Hal's server, when it's sung, "Come on here, dear boy, have a cigar, you're gonna go far." Then for Dave to be floating while Hal pleads for his life, "You're gonna fly high, you're never gonna die, you're gonna make it if you try, they're gonna love you." I'm sure it's coincidence, but I still loved it. The Shining is a great example of creating an uncomfortable feeling through cinematography. The use of hard cuts to transition between scenes keeps the tension high. The incongruous layout of the hotel made it as much of a maze as the hedges outside. Combine this with an interesting story and fantastic performances, and you have a horror classic, full stop. The change I ask of everyone is to imagine Jack Nicholson replaced by Gina Carano or Shelley Duvall replaced by Patton Oswalt and see if the gender role reversal suddenly is believable. I think this could work, and I think it would kill the toxic masculine argument. That's a really interesting argument, actually. As for Dr. Strangelove, I hate to judge before all the facts are in, but something tells me that some people exceed their authority in being able to critique a satire. But when the pickings are slim, I see what you did there, and you're riding down to certain doom, just recall in the end, we'll meet again, don't know how, don't know when. If I had heard the name Paul Verhoeven instead of Stanley Kubrick, I could have easily said, I see why you think that, but you missed the point. The only way that I can justify this thought process is that someone used Google to look up the CBR headline generator, rolled the dice, and that headline appeared. So he said, I'll roll with it. I'm only getting paid $10 per article. By the way, CBR pays $10 per article and 50 cents per 1,000 views, to my understanding. And I'm not joking about the existence of the CBR headline generator, even if it exists for satirical reasons. But I say with my best Peter Falk impression, just one more question. Who are we comparing against? What majestic director is there that supposedly is the complete package, not objectifying toxic masculinity and making instant classics in a unique style? I'm sorry, but even with my limited exposure to his work, Kubrick isn't just some good director with a flawed vision. Kubrick is the hype. Now that I allowed myself to be offended, I guess the good that came out of this is that now people can at least reflect back on Kubrick's work and see it for the glory we all recognize it for. When I get time, I'll watch his catalog of work like I've been slowly doing with Martin Scorsese and Akira Kurosawa. Great film, should be celebrated. I'm sorry for going down that road. I planned on writing a letter about how much I grew up in a Star Trek household, and hopefully it'll be both my next letter and a much, much more positive-minded one. Celebrate great cinema and don't let the stars collapse on you. Love hearing from you, Electron Star Collapse. Good letter. Appreciate it very, very much. Omar94 is here. Omar94 says, "Hi, Rob. Harlan Ellison was once talking about the movie-making process, saying nobody made a good movie from a bad script. But it is possible to make a bad movie from a good script. Yes, it is. Frank Darabont said something which reminded me of what Ellison said when Darabont was talking about the Kenneth Branagh film adaptation of Frankenstein as he wrote the script for that movie. He called it the best script he ever wrote, but the worst movie he ever saw." You were a script reader, so you know more about this than I do, but the problem with translating a good script comes down to casting and direction, in particular the direction, as the directors are the ones in charge. This was something Charles Edward Pogue brought up when he explained his disappointment in Dragonheart. He considered his original Dragonheart script the best script he ever wrote, but was disappointed in the movie, saying the film's director, Rob Cohen, had neither the poetry in his soul nor the panache to bring Dragonheart to the screen. He also mentioned how Cohen cut and altered parts of his script, as well as Universal dumbing down his original script, which was much darker and more serious in the final film, in order to appeal to a youth demographic, essentially turning the film into a kids' movie. I guess the solution to making movies just as good as the scripts would be for writers and directors to have symbiotic relationships, which would prevent clashes of creative differences. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Yes. Well, here's the thing. Like, you got to get the right material and the right director together. But you have to remember, like, when you're reading a script on the page, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Should I do? Yeah, I'll do this. Why not? I'll do this. This will be kind of fun. So I'm going to read you the first page of the script that I'm working on. I know some people are going to be like, oh, God. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to read the first page just to prove a point. So this is the project that I'm working on. And I'm opening up, and I'm going to read the first page of the script, which is basically, it's not very much, but you can. I will offer some detail. I will offer some detail. Fade in. Interior, Orange County Megachurch, noon. A sumptuous, crystalline cathedral. Thousands of the faithful sit, waiting in breathless anticipation, underneath broken shafts of heavenly sunlight. The stage, fit for an arena rock band, lighting grids, massive banks of speakers, manned camera positions all around to capture the show. A spotlight dramatically blasts down from above. The opening theme music to Hallelujah House pounds from the speakers. A single figure steps out upon the stage. Our host, world-famous televangelist Emil Zacharias, tall, slender, bespoke. A pale-skinned smooth talker with an armor-piercing gaze. His radiant smile threatens to engulf his entire face in a single gulp. Prancing to the front of the stage, Zacharias raises his outstretched arms as if to embrace the entire crowd. Thunderous applause. The cameras catch every angle. The consummate showman, Zacharias dramatically puts up his palms, silencing the room. He breathes deeply, sucking half the air out of the auditorium. Zacharias says, "There is a godless evil in the world today. It favors no color, creed, or gender." The crowd leans forward, enraptured. "It twists the souls of our children into seething cauldrons of hatred. And that evil is Satan himself." The crowd roars approval as one camera pushes in to an extreme close-up of Zacharias' face. So that's the first page of the script I'm working on. How do you shoot that? I mean, You could shoot it. There's a lot of different ways to shoot it. There's a million different ways to shoot it. How do you set up the location? What is the location? When you say Orange County megachurch, do you think the Crystal Cathedral in Orange County, or do you think that crazy megachurch in New York? What does that mean? How does that all work? How do you set that all up? There's a million choices that you'd have to make shooting this opening sequence. I know, because I've had to. You can watch my opening. You can watch that. You could, if you watch my animatic, you could see that scene and how I envision it. As a matter of fact, well, that's all I'm going to say. But the question is, when it comes to a screenplay, the script is there. 5 different directors would shoot that opening in 5 different ways. Would you make it feel like a rock concert? Like shoot it, I don't know, like a music video, or all these things? Or would you approach it in a very stately manner? Long camera moves, not a lot of editing, sweeping camera moves through this. How would you do it? So my point is that when you have words on a page, there's an infinite number of ways you can choose to convey this. And a lot of it's based on what happens afterwards. Why does this story begin at a church, megachurch? Why is this character why are we dealing with this character? And what happens later on in the film plays a part. So, it's a big deal. So how do you as a director shoot something like that? So Frank Darabont can write the best script in the world, and it might indeed read beautifully on paper. But when it's shot, all of the decisions that are made, depending on someone's taste. I mean, first of all, Kenneth Branagh comes from the theater. I'm a huge Kenneth Branagh fan. Like, I loved Henry V. I loved it. I believe that was his first feature that he directed, based on, obviously, the Shakespeare play. But was Kenneth Branagh the best person to direct an adaptation of Frankenstein? On some ways, somebody would have said, well, yeah, because, I mean, it's very theatrical, Even the original James Whale Frankenstein movies are very theatrical. So why not? Well, I would say that Robert De Niro being made the monster, that might not have been the best choice. I understand why it was done, but I think that what can happen is when you approach something, there's a million different decisions that need to be made. Like, as an example, like I wrote our host, world famous televangelist Emil Zacharias. He's tall, slender, and bespoke, meaning like his clothes. Okay, he's a pale-skinned, smooth talker with an armor-piercing gaze. What does that look like? What is a pale-skinned, smooth talker? I mean, you have to figure that out. And so on one page of a screenplay, and this is why people are frustrated, like writers get frustrated, because they think what they've written is self-evident. But what they don't understand is when you describe anything, where do you put the camera? Like, where does it go? And every shot needs to convey something. And if it doesn't, well, then what exactly are you doing? So it's tough. Making movies is a really hard thing to do. And sometimes even the best directors might get material they think they know what to do with it, and they go off on a journey, and it doesn't necessarily work out. Like, I love Francis Ford Coppola. Love him. Godfather 1 and 2 are 2 of my favorite, if not my favorite movies of all time. I love Apocalypse Now. I love The Conversation. I love Rumblefish. I even love the Rainmaker. But I'll tell you what I don't love. A movie that I was crushed by. A movie I could not wait to see. Coppola's Dracula. I hated that movie. When I walked out of it, I called that movie Bonfire of the Vampires. Man, was I pissed. I was so pissed. Now, I've watched it again and again, and I don't want to burn the negative. I tolerate it now, but I still find it to be and there's so much beautiful stuff in it, but I think none of it hangs together. I mean, I appreciate what he did. I love watching it now, but I don't love it. I watch it like, you know how I like to watch it? With the sound off, even though I love Wojciech Kilar's score. Wojciech Kilar's score is amazing. It's amazing. And the visuals are beautiful. Dracula was one of those movies that I used to like to put on when we had people over. We'd partied at our house 20 years ago, and I would put movies on my home theater system and play, like, dance music or techno or whatever. And the music would be playing and the movie would be on. And Dracula was one of the movies I like to put on because the visuals are so interesting. And if you're listening to it with techno music, it's like, wow, this is rad. But how do you do it? There's a million different ways. Think about it. And people just sometimes doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And what do you do? Oh, this is a big one. Okay, strap yourselves in, moderators. Are you still here? This is from our friend Mark Chure. Mark C, our official Toxic fan, has written a letter. This is a good one. Mark C says, "Dear Rob, okay, sir, let's get political. I don't care who you vote for. I don't need to care what you think is fact about certain political situations or topics. What I do care about is if we're going to discuss such things, we have to do so from an intelligent perspective. On Saturday, September 29th, Robservations, you commented that Republicans in the Trump administration were literally throwing people in cages, referring to the detaining done by the Border Patrol. You also made a comment about how crossing such a wasteland to get to this country is in some way admirable, and that we should allow these people into our country. I didn't say we necessarily should allow them, but I said people that had the wherewithal to walk 2,000 miles to get from one place to another, that kind of commitment, those kinds of people are maybe the kind of people we'd want to have in this country because they might do something extraordinary when they get here. First, let's get some semantics out of the way. Unless you've got photos of Mitch McConnell or his ilk slamming a cage door at the Border Patrol detention center, well, the Trump administration Republicans' comment is literally a lie. Now on to the terrible photos of kids in cages at the border. On May 29th, 2018, the Associated Press, not Rush Limbaugh, not Ben Shapiro, not Steven Crowder. By the way, I wouldn't necessarily lump Rush Limbaugh and Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro into the same group. Not even Tim Pool. The Associated Press ran a fact-check story giving absolute proof that the photos in question were actually taken in 2014 during the Obama administration. So any attributing the photos of kids in cages as some sort of policy developed by the Trump administration is a lie. I didn't say it was developed by the Trump administration. Now, why are conditions at these detention centers so horrible? Why are kids separated from their parents? 2 reasons. The first is the Flores Settlement Agreement of 1997, stating that detained children were not allowed the same degree of detention as adults and had to be as free as possible. The parents have no such restrictions, which requires the need for separation. So the separation of children from their parents in border detention centers has been going on since the Clinton administration. The second reason is more of an opinion. If a parent voluntarily takes a child across hundreds of miles of desert with little water or food, are they fit to keep children? We know for a fact that at least one child died while being detained. This, of course, was blamed on the Trump administration and the Border Patrol. It couldn't possibly be that the Border Patrol detained a child who was already dying of dehydration and being malnourished, and care couldn't be given to save them. That would point the finger of blame at the parents. As to why these detention centers seem so inhumane, there are so many coming over and so many being detained that they're having to process more people than the current infrastructure can handle. This has been a real problem for more years than the current president has been in office. Both President Obama and House Speaker, as well as Hillary Clinton, have discussed the idea of a border wall to help quell the crossings. Only now, with a conservative in office, has the tune changed. But the need for a border wall hasn't. Despite popular opinion, it wasn't going to keep everyone out. They'll still find a way, but it could at least slow down the flow so the infrastructure can keep up and end the overcrowding. As now for your quote, refugees, unquote. I find your choice of words both misleading and a bit insulting. The southern border has been an issue for the United States since the late 1800s. The Immigration Acts of 1891, 1917, and 1924 slowly made it illegal to cross the U.S. border without stopping at least an inspection or official authorization point to enter the country. So for 96 years at the latest, people from Mexico crossing the southern border without papers or going through inspection are not refugees. They are not immigrants. They are illegals from another country committing a federal crime. This is the rule of law agreed upon by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Well, it wasn't agreed upon by the people that are coming from, say, Central America, whose towns have been taken over by gangs who have no safety in their towns, but okay. While you paint a picture of refugees trying to escape the troubles of their homeland, you fail to mention that a portion of illegals crossing our southern border are actual criminals escaping prosecution. As we have no way of telling who the criminals are until they break the law here, whether it's drugs, theft, murder, or rape, it seems logical to me to keep them all out of the country unless they've gone through proper channels. In the end, I think what angers me most about your position, it's not that you ignore facts and the rule of law to stick it to Trump. No, it is the disservice it does to those who play by the rules. My friend, who now goes by Chris, came from Mexico on a visa. He, along with 5 other immigrants with actual visas, worked at a local Mexican restaurant. I watched as he went from busboy to waiter to shift manager to general manager of the entire restaurant. He worked hard, saved his money, got a sponsor, studied his butt off, and has now been a U.S. citizen as well as his family for 15 years. If you think the law is unjust, campaign to have it changed. If you think the process to become a citizen is too harsh, campaign to have it changed. You do yourself and no one else a service by putting the president or any person on blast because of your distaste for them and what you think the law should be instead of what the rule of law is. Mark C. Well, I think that's a good letter, Mark. And to be honest, I don't disagree with you. I agree with everything that you said in this letter. The problem is the reality of the world doesn't. And the fact is, I agree with all of these things. We want legal immigration. People should enter this country legally. They should be accounted for. We should know where they are. They should pay taxes. All of those things. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where there are places in Mexico that are overrun by drug cartels. There are places in Central and South America where people are, their lives are threatened every single day. And look at the Syrian refugees, the refugee crisis in Europe. Do you think they want that? No. Does anybody want? Do you want a bunch of immigration from third world countries where people they flood into your country and they don't understand the customs and they don't learn to speak the language, all those things? No. You don't want any of those things. However, they exist. And the real question is, when people are in need, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to be humane and treat them well? Or I mean, there is the rule of law, there's the spirit of law. And I understand, I mean, it has to be flexible. Our rules have to be, they can't be so draconian that, and look, I don't think that, think about it. Do you think a parent who is bringing a child fleeing across the desert, do you think they're doing so because they want to put their child in harm's way? I don't think so. I think they're looking for a better life. I don't think they're looking to freeload on, you bring a kid, everybody wants their children to grow up and have a better life. That's why they come here. And, we have to understand that. Do I think that, here's the problem, my problem with all of this. Again, it goes back to Yuval Harari's book, Sapiens, that I've talked about a lot on the show. That book is a 100,000-year history of humanity. Yuval Harari asks a question at the end of the book. What is it that we as the human race want? What do we want? What is it we want as people, as entities, as human beings? What do we want? How do we want to live? And, the United States, while it's never been perfect, at least aspired to lead the way in terms of human rights and in terms of educating its population. Well, we've lost our way. There's that great, what is it, from the newsroom where Jeff Daniels has that clip. We've all seen it on YouTube where he talks about how we're not the greatest country anymore and explains why. I mean, look, we've become, the United States has, I don't need to list all the problems that we have, but we have a lot of really serious pressing problems, and they're not getting solved because we have such great political divides in this country. And, it's the same. We're not taking care of the environment anymore the way we used to. I mean, we were going in a good direction, and then that has been pulled back. People aren't. Now it's like, are we looking, an example, are we looking to have a Supreme Court that represents all of the people in the United States? Representative government. That's what we want. But now it's no longer like that. Our politics is so partisan that everybody is looking to get their side in rather than work with all sides. And I don't think you can deny that that's going on. And that it's, let's try and make it one way instead of the other, even though our country, we have to have both sides represented. That's all I'm saying. And I feel that at least in the last 4 years, I feel the country has become more divided than united. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that there's certain rhetoric. I think there's certain things, certain buttons that have been intentionally pushed to create that divide. And I think that needs to change. And, I think we have a moral obligation to the world to lead by example. And we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all for a number of reasons. And that's I would like to see us do more of that. But as to your letter, I don't disagree with your letter at all. I think everything you said is absolutely correct. But I think there's things in addition to what you said in your letter that are considerations that we need to make or at least consider. But anyway, a good letter, certainly food for thought. Let's see. Kenny Crayley Jr. is here. Dear Rob and members of the Post-Geek Singularity, I'm back again with another letter. And for today's letter, I wanted to talk about sound design. Specifically how certain films and how some classic films and their soundtracks are remastered for Blu-ray disc and 4K UHD Blu-ray and Dolby Atmos. So here goes. When we get a classic film on Blu-ray or 4K, we want the sound mix to sound like it did when we saw it in the theaters. But when the sound mix is redone or remixed, sometimes the results are not the best. Two examples I can think of are the 2000 DVD release of Jaws and the 2001 DVD release of Superman the Movie. Both of these films had their entire sound mixes redone, and it took years for the original mixes from 75 for Jaws and 78 for Superman to be put on disc as an option for the audio. Thankfully, with the recent 4K UHD Blu-rays of those movies, you can watch those films with their original sound mixes. Star Wars is another example, but at least for the special editions of the original trilogy on 4K UHD, both on Disney Plus and on the disc, the remixes of those films in Dolby Atmos sound a lot better than the 2004 DVD mixes. So the question I ask is always good. Is it always good to remix an older film in Dolby Atmos and redo the whole sound effects with it? The answer is, in my view, is no, unless those sound effects are original, cannot be found. But if the original sound effects can be found, you try and preserve the original sound as much as you can on 4K Blu-ray with Dolby Atmos. What are your thoughts on this, Rob? Good question, Kenny from Ohio. I like this question. Look, I believe in preserving the original film experience as much as possible. And there are some films that only existed in mono because there was no stereo sound, so they go back and they remix them. Superman the movie, of course, Dolby Stereo was new, and they wanted to go back, and if they had the technology at the time, they would have done something better. I like it when you get a good Atmos mix, something's bolstered up to Atmos, if the filmmakers are involved with it. Some of the time they're involved, they go a little too far. I don't like that. I like that original sound is a big part of the movie. And I think, it really depends on how it's done, how well it's done. But nowadays, like you pointed out, as long as the original sound mixes are there, like Star Wars, the original Star Wars, for instance, had different, 4 different sound mixes or something? And which one's real? Which one did you see? There's the 70 millimeter mix, there's the mono mix, there's the stereo mix, different kinds of things. But, Star Trek The Next Generation was originally only in 2-channel stereo because that's all that existed. When they redid the show in 7.1, Dolby 7.1, it sounded a lot better, but they kept the sound mix pretty much the same. They just made the sound field bigger and more active, and I think that was very effective. It really depends on how it's done. It needs to be artfully done. But definitely a great question. Wow, you know what? I can't believe I have not gotten through many of these letters, and I should have gotten through more. But hang on. Stubble McShave sent in a tip and says, you should end your horror movies run by watching Young Frankenstein to end with a humorous look at the horror genre. It's like ending a great meal with an awesome dessert. I might do that. Maybe we'll do that on November 1st. I might do that. It's not a bad idea. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, kind souls, I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 523. But guess what? In just a little over 3 hours, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, will join me to discuss William Friedkin's 1985 masterpiece of hardcore crime thriller, starring William Peterson as Richard Chance and Willem Dafoe as Rick Masters, the great counterfeiter. Score by Wang Chung. To Live and Die in L.A., ladies and gentlemen, right here, Whining About Movies. I think Whining About Movies, episode 79, To Live and Die in L.A. We're going to be back, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be great because I love To Live and Die in L.A. Greg Smith is here. Joshua Levesque is here. The Richard is here. Let's see, is anybody else here? I don't know. How far back do I go? Nope. I think just you three guys. I want to thank them for being great moderators. And I want to thank everybody for writing letters. Thanks for supporting the channel via super chats and tips. Remember, there are 3 days to still submit posters to the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And remember, Dieter Bastian, I believe it's an entry. Their Secret Exchange 2 Broken Promises might be the first entry that we're going to see this weekend. I hope. If they finish it, you never know. Maybe the film print's going to be wet when they drop it off. I don't know. But you got 3 more days to enter the festival, which is pretty exciting. And I will read more of these letters. Man, I got a lot of letters, you guys. Great letters, though. Great letters. We got some great... Vesna's got a letter she wrote, which is really great. There's a lot of great letters. And if you send a letter to Elizaviews, I'll read that tonight, too. So it'll be fun. We'll enjoy it. Hopefully there'll be a great subject to talk about tomorrow. But anyway, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I say come back at 7:30 and join Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, and the enchantress. Well, she just enchants me. But the enchantress of all. You should see her art. The enchantress of art. The enchantress of everything. Anyway, 7:30 To Live and Die in L.A. Join us. And until then, have a better day.